Oh, good. Oh, some people's faces are looking really lovely. Really lovely. I'm kind of jealous. So welcome in Restorative week of lockdown. We're going to start with some focus on the breath. So I want you to be comfortable, as always, and that might very well mean lying down. Certainly I would if I wasn't guiding you, because my hips are incredibly stiff today. So if you're sitting, if you want to lean against a wall so that you kind of avoid that slump, you've got that support to help keep you upright without tensing the body. Prop under the thighs, wrap a blanket around yourself, just get really comfortable. Take a few moments to settle in, settle down. Yeah, and start that process of settling inwards. And let the eyes, well, think about reducing visual distraction. So that might mean closing the eyes. It might mean finding a single point to focus on, or just softly letting the eyes look down to the floor in front of you. And then start to bring your focus to your breath. And this practice is going to have 4 parts. So it's not a it's not a count-based process. It's a time-based process. And what I want you to do is, for the first part of this process, I want you to really focus on the inhale portion of your breath. So I'm going to put my timer on. So the breath may well be equal inhale and exhale, but focus, concentrate on the sensations that you feel when you breathe in. So that may well be coolness around the tips of the nostrils. It may be a sense of a lift of the chest, or a gentle moving out of the belly. Or it may move between those two, or it may be something completely different. But let that be the focus. At any point, if you lose it, just start again. Come back to drawing the breath in and feeling and noticing. And then for the second phase, keep the breath flowing, but I want you to switch your attention this time to the exhale. Feel how that lands in the body. So that may be sensing the warmth as the breath leaves on the top lip. It may be a feeling of kind of release downwards of the ribs or inwards, or a softening of the belly. You may also notice a change in energy. The out breath is focused on the relaxation, that replenishment that we need. And then we're going to switch focus again, this time to both the inhale and the exhale. Focus on both, bringing them into balance. And again, if you lose focus, if you suddenly find the mind's wandered off, it's almost like taking a moment in celebration. You've noticed, you've done what we do as humans, you've caught it and you're coming back. And then for the last portion of this practice, rather than focusing on the inhale and the exhale, can you focus on the pauses in between the different parts of that active breathing? So the pause between the inhale and the exhale. And you're not trying to hold it for any particular length of time, just noticing it, and when you're ready, move on to the exhale. And then again at the base of the exhale, noticing that space, that pause. And then when the body is ready and needs, breathe in. And can you track the sensations, the feelings in each of those pauses? What do they feel like in your body? Last few moments focusing on the pauses. And then drop your focus completely. Just carry on breathing and let the mind just have a little bit of space, let it wander. And then just bring some gentle movement if you're lying down, fingers and toes. If you're sitting, you may want to just gently roll the shoulders. Maybe just sway from side to side. Just start to bring a little bit of movement in before we come into our sequence. So we're going to come onto hands and knees. And just because we've been sitting in that breath-based meditation, that breath practice for a little while, come onto your hands and knees and just start to move the body through space. So maybe starting with some really gentle circles or ovals, just moving the hips from side to side. One way, and then the other. And then come to stillness. We'll move through some very, very slow, gentle cat-cows. So as you inhale, feel the collarbones broadening away from each other, belly is soft, sits bones lift up to the ceiling, and they draw away from each other. And then as you exhale, round the chin in, lift up through the upper back, feel that nice curve and stretch. And then flow through a few rounds like that on your own, with your breath. And in both movements, can you get a sense of the sacrum staying long and lengthening? So we're not kind of crunching into that base of the spine. And then after you finish the round that you're on, come back to stillness in your tabletop. And we're just going to drop the hips from one side and then to the other. So there's a slight kind of rolling from side to side on the knees. If that's not comfortable, pop a blanket underneath. And you're not coming all the way down. Really how low you go just depends on how it's feeling for you, but just getting a stretch into the outer hip. And then come back to stillness. We're going to take melting heart pose. So hips stay over knees. Nobody needs to see my belly. Let me tuck my shirt in. And then walk the hands forward. Stay up on the palms to begin with. And then you're just dropping the chest down. You may come all the way down onto forearms. The head may come down. But if that's too much for the shoulders, just stay with the head raised. Press back through the sits bones. And quite a nice, well, not nice, but a useful variation is to tuck the toes here. So you just get a stretch through the plantar fascia, the underside of the feet. Couple more breaths. Lovely. And then walk your hands back in. Just sit on your knees for a moment. And we'll take a gentle twist in this kneeling position. So right hand behind you, no more than behind your right sort of back of the hip. Don't bring it over into the middle of the back. Left hand lifts up and then gently cross over. And really gentle twist. Feeling as if the twist is coming sort of from the shoulders and the collarbones. I found that quite an effective way of stopping tweaking in the lower back. It really takes the twist into the upper body. And just notice how you want to be in this shape. Is there a desire to sort of get yourself into the deepest twist you can? Because part of our restorative practice is just noticing these tendencies that we all have from time to time to push, to take ourselves right to our edge. And what we're aiming for here is to back off from that so that we can move into that parasympathetic activation and let the body rest and repair. One more breath. And then exhale, we'll take it straight over to the other side. Take a gentle inhale. And then exhale again from the collarbones, starting to twist. Two more slow, steady breaths. Lovely. And then we'll start with our first truly restorative posture. We're going to take half frog, which means we're going to be lying down on our belly and just to sort of demo as much as I can. Imagine I'm lying down. I'm in this sort of shape. So my knee is in line with my hip. The other arm is back down behind. So you're going to want to have your blankets for this to provide padding and support down each side. If you've got two blankets, set yourself up with a blanket on each side now so that you don't have to get up in between sides. Traditionally, this is done with the accordion folded blanket. So kind of into thirds, but it's important not to have any wrinkles. So your support's nice and smooth. So if the accordion folded blanket just feels a bit of a performance, then just fold your blanket in half and then in quarters. And then when you're ready, you're going to come and lie down on your belly. And when you're down on your belly, we'll start with the right leg. So you're going to bend the right leg, bring it out to the side so the knee is no higher than the hip, and that you've got padding underneath the shin, underneath the ankle, so that you're comfortable. And then your right arm comes out into that goalpost shape. Left arm comes down, shoulders resting down, palm is resting up. And that left front hip is also resting down. So again, if you've got really bony hips, you might need a little bit of padding. I like to turn my head the same way as the bent arm and bent knee, because my neck isn't very mobile. But if you would rather have a much stronger twist, turn your head the opposite way, then that's absolutely fine, do so. And it may be that you come down and then you have to come back up and just move the blankets around so that you've got lots of support. You want to make sure that the right arm is also touching something warm. So if you're on a hardwood floor, make sure the blanket's long enough for the arm as well. And then just start to turn inwards. Maybe coming back to that focus on the breath. And I don't know if you noticed in the practice, but when we focus on the in-breath is stimulating. It activates or works in concert with the sympathetic nervous system, whereas the exhale is the relaxed portion of the nervous system and of the breath cycle. So as you lie in stillness here, maybe let your attention be absorbed by the exhale. And just as when we are in meditation, the mind is going to wander, and it might be really busy. That often happens at the start of a restorative practice. Don't try and control that or stop that or dampen it down, because it doesn't work. Just let the mind wander freely and try and not get caught up in repetitive patterns of thinking. But just let the thoughts come and go. And as I say, use that focus on the exhale to give you an anchor to absorb the mind. It just becomes a little bit easier to stay present and to feel into the sensations of what it's like to allow the body to rest. Got about half a minute left on this side. And then we're going to just release from the right side. So straighten the right leg. And then bring both arms out in front of you. Make a little pillow for your forehead. And just rest in that linear straight line for a couple of breaths. And then we're going to swap over to the other side. So if you've got the blanket in place already, just bend the left leg and the left elbow. If you need to move your props over, then do that. And then settle yourself down again. And as I said before, take the time to adjust yourself so you're super comfortable and that everything feels just right. It's really worth taking that extra time at the start. We're in the pose for a good 5 minutes. And then start that process of releasing and letting go on this side. And you may find it helpful to continue to focus on the breath if that's what you've been doing. Or it may be time for a change, to use a different technique to anchor you into the present moment, which could be focusing on a particular sound or a mantra, a short phrase that you repeat over and over gently to yourself. Last few moments in frog on this side. And then gently start to straighten the left leg. And then draw the left arm in front of you. Make a little pillow again with the right hand on top of the left or the other way around. Rest the forehead on your pillow. And just lie for a moment. And then gently bring your hands underneath your shoulders, press up onto your knees, pop over onto the side of the hip and bring yourself up into a comfortable seated position, which could be kneeling or it could be sitting cross-legged, just for a moment because we've been lying down for a little while. So I just want to bring you back up to a neutral position before we come into a nice gentle front body opening, back bend. Good. So we're going to come into Baddha Konasana now, so supported cobbler's pose. I think most of you have done this with me before, so sort of depending on your prop situation, you can have a bolster or bolster substitute across the short side of the mat, and then another support at right angles to it. Make a cushion for the back of the head. Oops. I haven't got my Blue Peter hat on today. There isn't one I prepared earlier. So, and then again, depending on your prop situation, come to lie back down, soles of the feet together. It may be that you just roll blankets up and put them under the outside of the thighs. That's quite nice. If you've got an extra bolster, you can put it underneath the legs so it supports that way. It's kind of time to get a little bit creative. If you know you are quite open and you've got a reasonable back bend, you can even do this with just one bolster and a support for the back of the head, and just come to lie down. I'm not so keen on this variation. It doesn't feel quite so relaxing to me, but it's available for some people who've got very open hips and a deep back bend that can feel really comfortable. But what you want to kind of focus on feeling is that when the legs are in that butterfly shape, you're not holding any kind of muscular tension to keep them in position. And just to demonstrate what I was talking about with one bolster underneath both legs, kind of looks like that. So it supports the back of the legs and the outside of the thighs. Actually, when I'm in this position, this is quite comfortable. And it should feel like without most of our, well, all of our restorative postures, once you come into the shape, it should feel like the body is letting out a sigh of relief almost. It's like, oh, this feels good. I can start that process of relaxation because I'm not having to hold effort and tension within my tissues, within my muscles. Somebody, something has got my back. I'm supported. So if that isn't quite where you're at, if you can detect some tension that's holding you, then adjust your props. But you guys all look like you're in a good shape. And it might be worth here for the first few rounds of breath, focusing on the inhale, because this is quite an energizing shape, even though it's restorative. We're still stretching through the diaphragm. And there's various different physiological reasons why this is energizing. So just gently focusing on the inhale will help that process. And it's good for our well-being to be able to move effectively between mobilization and rest. Somebody who's in a good state of health can manage that transition effectively. So that's one of the reasons in a more yang style class we move between movement and then rest. But even in a restorative class, you still have the opportunity to stimulate the body more through the in breath and then let it relax through the out breath. Now we've been in the shape for a couple of minutes. Maybe now is time, if you've been focusing on the in breath, to drop that. Just let the breath move naturally through the body and use whatever tool works for you to stay in this present moment. Last few moments in Baddha Konasana. And then you're going to gently draw the knees together, maybe using the hands to support you. And depending on kind of what props you've got supporting the outer thighs, you might want to either roll onto one side and then use the hands to support you as you bring yourself back up, or that doesn't work because of the props, gently press your hands either side of you and bring yourself up to a seated position vertically. Good. So we're going to come into penultimate pose before Shavasana. We're going to take a supported twist. So if you've got your two bolsters, have them either side of your mat, because we're going to draw the knees together and drop them to one side and then the other. A couple of things to think about that can be quite nice. Dreadful word, but needs must. One is to have a blanket spread wide across the head end of your mat, and then to just make a little, I don't know if you guys can see, a little kind of fold or pleat that will support the back of the neck, or you can make a little roll. Just provide some support for the cervical spine. The other thing that can be quite nice is to put a blanket in between your knees so that when you drop over, particularly if you've got bony knees, they're not kind of rubbing against each other. And then come to lie all the way down. Find that little roll or that crease to support the back of the neck. So you're not lifting the head, you're just providing a little bit of support under the cervical spine. And then before we move the knees to one side, just want you to feel like you are lengthening your sits bones away from you. So you're flattening the sacral area. Should feel nice and comfortable. And then you're going to drop your knees over to one side. Doesn't matter which way you go first. Obviously, if you've only got one bolster, it does matter. Go the way of the bolster. And then with the arms, they could be goalposts resting on that blanket above your head. You could have them down by your side, one hand resting on the belly, one hand resting on the chest. But you want to have your arms in a way that you can feel your shoulder blades kind of broadening and settling down into the mat. And maybe start in this shape by just noticing where you feel the breath moving, because we're in this twist. And then just for a moment, take your awareness to your face. That point right between the eyebrows. And then broaden that out across the forehead, softening any lines. Soften the temples. Soften the jaw. Those points where the jaw meets the skull. Make sure that the tongue is down in the base of the mouth, not stuck to the roof. And then notice if there's more opportunity to release tension in the inner thighs. Sometimes even when we're not aware, there's a gripping going on. Can you soften that? And then in this shape, draw a long, slow breath in through the nose. Hold at the top. And then part the lips and sigh the breath away. On your next inhale, going to draw the knees back up to center, soles of the feet down. Again, take that moment just to adjust by drawing the sits bones away from you, lengthening through the sacrum. And we'll take the knees over to the other side. Obviously, if you need to move your props over and set them up before you come into the shape. And then just allow everything to start that process of settling and releasing. Recognizing that it's not instant, it takes time. And that's one of the reasons that we hold our restorative postures for longer, to support that release process. And then from here, gently draw the knees back up to center, feet flat on the floor. And then draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a hug. Maybe just draw some little circles or ovals with the knees, just to release. And then we're going to set up for Shavasana, or your rest pose, whatever that looks like. So wrap up, put socks on, put jumpers on. The other thing to say is, I'm going to hold us in Shavasana for about 5 minutes, but if you want to stay longer, please do. If you would rather turn your camera off so that you can stay as long as you want to, then please do your practice. But take your time to get really supported, really comfortable. And then when you're down, take 3 breaths where you draw the breath in through the nose, that gentle hold at the top, and then sigh the breath out really gently through the mouth. And each time you do that on the exhale, can you get that sense of softening and releasing and letting go? Once again, not trying to control thoughts, but equally not getting caught up in a particular thought or thought pattern. Just let the thoughts arise and then fall away. So we're just coming up to on the hour. So by all means, stay in your Shavasana if that feels right for you. But if you need to come out, if you've got things to do in your evening, then start to bring very gentle movement into fingers and toes. And then extend that movement very gently into some stretches. And when you're ready, roll over onto one side. Press your hands into the floor and gently bring yourself up to a comfortable seat. Rest your hands wherever is comfortable. And just take a few last moments focusing on your breath and checking in with how you're feeling without judgment, but just with observation. And then gently draw your hands together at heart center. Bow your head. Thank you so much for sharing your practice, your evening. Gently take forehead, thumbs up to forehead. Namaste.